Republican Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming. He's a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Wolf.
You're going over to the White House for this briefing. What have you been told? I know it's a classified session. National security advisors will be briefing. The president will make an appearance. What's the urgency of doing this at the White House? Usually these briefings are held in the Senate.
Well, I think it shows how consequential what's happening now in North Korea is in terms of their escalation. You know, North Korea for years has been called the land of lousy options, and we have to do something now because we have just seen this incredible advance in North Korea's capacity as well as their belligerence. You know, what they say or not say isn't as important to me as what they can do or not do, and they're getting to a point where the improved missiles, improved nuclear weapons that we know that they have, and improved capacity to deliver that weaponry is something that we just cannot continue with this strategic patience of the last 8 years, which is why we're where we are right now.
You were just in China. Is the Chinese government helping the United States deal with this nuclear crisis?
Well, I think for peaceful resolution, it's important that they do, because
are they?
I met with the number 2, 3, and 4 leaders in China specifically on this issue. The president of China had just gotten back from his visit to Mar-a-Lago with President Trump. They seem very optimistic and encouraged by that meeting between the two presidents. I believe they are going to be even more engaged. They say they have limited control over the dictator in North Korea, but they have more than we do. 85% of the economy of North Korea is connected in terms of trade with China. So I think it's important that they take a more active role. There is more they can do, and they need to do it.
Because a lot of analysts have suggested, I wonder if you agree with this theory, that a lot of the U.S. military maneuvers right now along the Korean Peninsula, sending that aircraft carrier strike force there, a nuclear-powered submarine with dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles, the exercises going on with Japan and South Korea, the military exercise, more designed to influence China than to deal with North Korea, for that matter. To convince China this is a crisis, you guys got to help out.
Well, and I think it's doing it with specific. They watch the globe, and when they see what the United States was able to do in Syria with the pinpoint accuracy of the 59 directed missiles into that air base, when they see the mother of all bombs that was done in Afghanistan, they see we have a global capacity that they might not have realized we had before.
You're talking about the Chinese or the North Koreans?
Both. And they know now we have a commitment to use it. So we want to work in a collaborative way with China. They have the influence through their trade relationships with North Korea, but it's not in China's best interest for North Korea to have the nuclear weaponry that close to that long border between China and North Korea.
You've been to that region. I'm assuming you've been to the Korean Peninsula. You've been along the DMZ. If the U.S. were to launch some sort of Tomahawk cruise missile strike or a mother of all, battles bomb against North Korea, they have an enormous conventional, they have nuclear bombs too, but they have a conventional capability along the demilitarized zone that could hit 30 miles south. 20 or 25 million people who live in the capital of Seoul. That's something the Afghani opposition doesn't have, or the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad doesn't have. The U.S. launches a military strike, it would be a disaster in the entire region.
Which is why, as I started, I said a peaceful solution is what's necessary. China needs to be heavily engaged in that. I'm very encouraged by what President Trump and President Xi have done working together. But what we're showing is there is U.S. strength, there is U.S. commitment and capacity to use that strength if necessary with the new president in the White House as we take a look at this, a peaceful solution with China engaged and obviously more sanctions. But for sanctions to be effective, China has to be involved as well, and an enforcement of those sanctions will additionally help.
Very quickly on this news that we're getting, the House Freedom Caucus, apparently now most of those members getting ready to vote in favor of some sort of compromise, an amendment that the president presumably likes. Let's say it gets the 216 votes on the floor of the House. You know the U.S. Senate. There are a whole bunch of moderate Republicans who aren't necessarily going to go along with it. What happens in the Senate?
Well, it would come to the Senate. There would be an open amendment process. People would bring up amendments to vote. But I am committed as a physician to long-term solutions for the health care of the American people. And it's not just good enough to me to repeal Obamacare. There were reasons when I was practicing medicine I thought we needed to do health care reform. So we have to get actually to a better system that was in place even before Obamacare was passed. you have that commitment from all of the members of the United States Senate to provide health care that is much more affordable. Under Obamacare, as you know, the costs have skyrocketed, the choices have gone down. In my home state of Wyoming, there's only one insurance carrier selling on the exchanges. It's not a choice, it's not a marketplace, it's a monopoly. People deserve better.
Senator, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Senator John Barrasso of the beautiful state of Wyoming.
Thank you.